Mary, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. Thanks, Lauren.
Oh my gosh, yes, I had the best time checking out your website. You work with so many amazing folks, not to mention, your speaking credentials, how deeply the advisor community and really work that's going on there. You've done such a great job of positioning yourself. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you today, not just about how you got here in your journey and the day-to-day work that you do, but I know we're going to get into a little bit more about how do you even get going with like identifying a topic and speaking and like really building a thought leadership platform. So we have a lot to cover in a short period of time. Over to you. How did you get into this world? And tell us a little
Sure.
bit more about your business.
Sure. No, thanks so much, Lauren. And yeah, I feel lucky every day to be able to work with some of the most incredible minds in the industry, some of the most developing thought leadership that I've ever experienced. So it has been really fun. But let me take you back really quick
Yeah.
and give you a quick backstory of where I came from. So I came out of Texas Tech's financial planning program. I love financial planning. It just makes me so excited to know these things that I feel like everybody in the world needs to know. And so I, as my little 25-year-old self, and have a degree under my belt and thought, I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. and knock on the halls of Congress and teach the world financial education. So that's what I did. I came
Love
out to
it.
DC. Long story short, ended up at FPA as a lobbyist
Hmm.
and did that. I had a portfolio of retirement, taxes, and then financial education, which we met in the Treasury's Gold Room and just had some really cool experiences with senators and representatives and even been to
Yes.
the White House a few times, like just some really cool, interesting things. And I just kept beating this band. Well, long story short, I ended up going into wealth management for a short period and never found my footing. I just never felt like it was a total fit after
Right.
I had these big dreams. I'm a big dreamer and a big idealist. And
Yep.
so, of course, I went to the Pentagon instead. That's the next logical fit.
Love it.
And I
Yes.
just had a great experience, traveled all over the world teaching service providers for military about financial education principles, everything from
Oh,
budgeting and savings to their specific retirement plan to how, like, very specific military benefits and services.
ah,
And that was really
fascinating.
fun.
Oh my
Really. So
gosh.
that's kind of where I got into this idea of speaking and really
Yeah.
kind of latched on and thought, I really like this. Fast forward, ended up going to Fort Riley, Kansas, which is
Hmm.
right next to Manhattan, Kansas, where
Yes.
Kansas State is, and worked on my PhD simultaneously while also working on the military compound there. And I worked with families of the fallen. And so, specifically, what they would get is almost $500,000 in death benefit and gratuity after their loved one died,
Mm.
which really came with a lot of emotion attached, right? That felt like blood money. I'd much rather have my loved one here. So, in this program, in the PhD program I was in, we were in financial therapy. We're talking about financial behavior. And that's where my real interest in this idea of money is not just money, right? Money is so tied to emotion and behavior and psychology. And I was seeing it firsthand play out in a life and death scenario. We saw the quickest we ever saw half a million spent was 3 months. And
Wow.
there's so much guilt and shame and anger and all those intangible feelings that came along with that. And so I ended up writing my dissertation on the financial behaviors of soldiers before and after deployment and really fleshed
Fascinating.
out what that looked like. We were actually right there. And so we were able to get over 800 soldiers before and after deployment. And mind you, this was a time when they were going to war zones
Yep.
4, 5, 6 times back to back to back. It was putting a lot of stress and strain on these families. So that really kind of was my entrance into this whole idea of money's not just about learning what to do and what not to do, but it's that whole
Yes.
integration of the human side of
Mhm.
money and what makes us us. Went back to Washington, D.C., worked for county associations. I've worked for federal, I've been on the Hill, worked
Yep.
at a federal and local level as well. And then got married, started having kids, and decided, you know what? I've always wanted to own my own business. So I started a
Yes.
consulting business, ended up at the CIA and spent 3 years at the Central
Mhm.
Intelligence Agency doing financial counseling for for
Interesting.
members of the CIA. And so it was really, really interesting to learn there, very different than my military experience, a
Yeah.
different population, but also some different experiences, and had a really rich, the coolest part of that experience was I was embedded in an EAP, or employee assistance program.
Mhm.
And so they work with therapists. So I was working right next to marriage and family therapists, counselors,
Wow.
psychologists, social workers that could help with addiction. And it
Mhm.
was a really cool experience for that 3 years to be able to say, we can help a holistic, like come at an issue at a holistic approach, right? So if
Mhm.
you have a gambler addicted to alcohol, then you're not just sending them to me to fix the financial side of it,
Mhm.
but you're
Yes.
working with the social worker who works with the marriage and family therapist who works with me. And there was a lot of back and forth and integrated work. And that's where I saw the beauty of all of these different service providers come together and solidify. And so fast forward, it kind of came along after that experience was over. I still teach at a couple of universities, and have taught for University of Georgia for several years now, but really wanted to do even more. And that was when 3 years ago came together and said, hey, why don't there were three other academics with me, and I said, why don't we do more speaking consulting together? And so
Yeah.
hence the idea of Financial Behavior Keynote was born. Of we have these backgrounds and experiences in this group, but really honing in on behavior. And I would say, Lauren, that's what sets us apart
Yep.
from any other group out there. It's a very niche group,
Mhm.
and especially niche in a speaking arena
Right,
as
it
well.
is.
We really want financial behavior, but we also have this component. Our tagline is where education meets experiential learning. And so
Mm.
part of learning that you have to have the research side.
Right.
You want that research side, that empirical research to back up what we're
Mhm.
doing in practice. And so
Mhm.
that's a lot of what we're trying to do, is bring practice and academia together and
Mm.
help facilitate more conversations and have more conversations and make the research that we do know about more understandable to be able to be practically implemented. And so that's what I get up for every day now.
Yeah.
That's what excites me, but that's kind of the background and how I got into it
Yeah.
and where I came from. So,
Oh my gosh, it's personally it speaks to me so much. I spent time in DC. And
oh yeah,
my husband's Navy, so
yeah,
like it's just hearing you talk about your journey, and of course I'm, work in the financial services space. There's so many connections.
yeah,
You're connecting the dots in so many ways. So okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper. I know
sure,
that I'm like, I feel like we need to have a whole conversation about these things and unpack more, or unpack them more.
yeah,
But
yeah.
um, let's dig specifically a little bit deeper for you're working with people, and correct me if I'm wrong, but have really established their focus, right? And in this work. And you're then are you helping them to then place them for, various speaking opportunities? Or tell us a little bit more about kind of that component of the business.
Sure. So, really, when it came together, the four of us were like, hey, we want to do more of this. The
Right.
whole idea behind it is leverage each other's social network and ability,
Mm,
right?
yep.
Because I'm a big believer in a blue ocean mentality. I think
Mhm.
too often we sit in what I call lobsters in a bucket, where we kind of tear each other down, or sit in
Yes.
our little circles and fight over some little piddly thing, instead of look out and say, there is enough. There is enough work, there is enough
Yep.
people, there's enough space, and your voice needs to be heard
Yes.
authentic to who you are. And so, regardless of someone else is speaking on your topic or doing what you do, instead of fighting about it, let's garner together and
Yes.
harness those assets to move forward. And so
Mhm.
that's where that idea came from. And as we started to band together, what we started to find is some incredible speakers, and Carl Richards, Sarah
Yes.
Newcomb, just some really incredible people came and said, we want to be a part of this.
Yep.
I said, well, by all means,
Let's
Carl
make
and
it
Sarah,
happen.
why not? And so
Yes.
we quickly grew. I mean, we started last year with four. We ended last year with 32. And so
Holy
we
smokes.
so quickly that it almost became, in fact, at one point last fall, I was like, time out. I don't know what I'm doing. We've got to slow down, because typically what happens in a speaker's arrangement or a setting is a speaker's bureau is really not interested in you until you're charging minimum 10, $20,000 or more. And
Mhm.
so if you think of a lot of speakers bureaus, you're looking at the creme de la creme. You're looking at
Yep.
people who have studied this, who have done it, and who have spoken a lot, like
Yep.
Morgan Housel's of the world, right? Or if you go to Washington Speakers Bureau, that's like the who's who of every
Yep.
political past president or director
Yes.
or some sort. But the problem is with those is what about those that have charging nothing and that just want to improve, or those that are maybe charging $1,000? No speaker bureau is interested in
Right.
taking on someone with $1,000. So I just felt like I was sitting in a speaker course in January and I looked around and there were all 60 people in this room and I thought all of them are great. But there was like an FBI hostage negotiator, there
Oh
was
my
a
God.
cartoonist, there was one other financial services person. I thought,
Yeah.
now I can go to this FBI hostage negotiator and get help with my speech, but he's not gonna know the ins and outs of this topic. Like I'm gonna
Right.
have to spend more time explaining the topic than I am the stuff. And so the
Yep.
idea hit me of we need community.
Yep.
And that kind of added into that blue ocean mentality is instead of being an elitist group that's like, well,
Mhm.
unless you charge X amount, it
Right.
becomes, hey, are you interested in this topic? Do you want to learn more? And are you willing to put forth the work that it
Mhm.
requires to go? And so that was born this year, the idea of a thought leadership community. And
Yep.
so that's what we have, and that's what we grow. And really, we have a lot of really different individuals. Some want to be speakers, some don't. Some
Yeah.
want to just come and learn. Some want to be better in communicating with their clients.
Right.
Some want to teach, create online courses or
Mm.
teach in an online type format. We even have writers in the group of people who want to be better
Wow.
bloggers or podcasters. We do have a few of those. So the formats and how, in fact, at one point we had called it content creators, and I wanted to get away from that. And here's why. I think it's in the day and age we're in, experts are everywhere, right? You
Yep.
just get a YouTube channel and call yourself an expert, and suddenly
Yep.
you're an expert. The other thing is there's so many influencers out there that
Mhm.
it's hard to tell. And influencers create content,
Right.
and that's not what we're in the business of. We're
Mhm.
in the business of thought leadership. And I
Mhm.
think that's the important takeaway from this is it's not just blowing smoke up and
Yep.
saying, hey, this is something I read about one time, but this
Mhm.
is that rich, developed, evidence-based
Yep.
practice that we can implement. And so that's what this group has become is a really rich, diverse group that have various forms of communication,
Mhm.
written, verbal, etc., that are coming together and saying, hey, you've created content before. How did that work? How did you
Yep.
have the lifespan of it? What did this look like? And what I find to be the most beneficial, and those in the group do as well, is it's not learning. There's no teacher, right? I'm not the Amidani that has all the answers, but
Yes.
instead, it's us learning from each other. It's that blue ocean of everyone has something to give and everyone has something to learn. And
Mhm.
as we learn and grow together, we become stronger together than we are
Right.
separate.
That's
And that's
right.
what that really is that community and thought leadership.
Oh my goodness. So I'm sure there's folks that are listening, right, that are thinking, I want to be in that thought leadership space, or I'm being told that I should be in that thought leadership space, or they're sort of they feel a tug for that, right? To be able to better educate prospects and clients, and just to really position themselves, especially if they really defined a target. Where do you recommend people even start with, right? Like you said, you can be a YouTuber, you could do a blog content, you could do so many things, speaking. Like where should folks start?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say, first off, start with where you feel most comfortable.
Yeah.
There's so many that are teaching great things on video or how to blog or what. Take a course on it. I don't care if it's from even your like if you take a public speaking 101 from your local university, get a little interested, get your feet wet, try something new out. It's expanding those horizons. I'm a lifelong learner, and I find that many of these in the group are just constantly learning. Some are far in their career and
Mhm.
almost in ready to retire, but they want to continue teaching. And so that's what's cool about it. Now, what we do inside the community is help people take them from where they're at and add a little more value. Like bring everything you have is essentially what I say and see if we can't add to it, because
Yeah,
that collective wisdom together. And so by all means, we want, if you're a financial planner and just want better communication skills and how to communicate maybe better through your newsletter or better on video, we've got that community. Now, we don't teach video one-on-one like some others do, but we will
right.
refer you to those groups. We also offer discounts because we have that ability to offer the services that we need. So we're not speaker coaches. We don't do speaker training ourselves, but we have the ability to collectively come together and say, yeah, there's 3 individuals. Take your pick, and here's a discounted rate for that. So we have some cool opportunities inside the community just because we've come and banded together and
Mhm.
said, let's see what we can build
Of
together.
course. Yeah. I know whenever we're talking with folks, sometimes I think it's just like, what's the most natural? Like, if you don't
Yeah,
like writing and you feel like you're like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? Then maybe you explore something else, but if you've got that tug and that pull to be able to lean into it, it's you got to listen to that, right? What
yeah.
about when we talk about like kind of thought leaders, right? You could sort of like, okay, you can't just do like one blog and then all of a sudden you're a thought leader or something like that. Like, how do you kind of define thought leadership when it comes to either like frequency or is it around a subject matter expert? I'd love to hear a little bit more about kind of your thinking and the group's thinking around thought leadership.
Absolutely. So we purposely call it a thought leadership group because we know thought leaders are created over time. It's a
Mhm.
lot of work to get there, and that's not everyone's ballywag. But I think it's really important to recognize thought leadership as it goes in. And so one of the things we've started to recognize over time and realize is, one, let's go back to experts. Experts, since the rise of YouTube, it used to look on of like, hey, you've got great certifications, you got Brown, you must be an expert in that field. And we're just seeing it watered down
Mhm.
between the influencer world and the ability to get degrees and certifications and, I
Right.
mean, fly by
Barriers
the
to
night
entry.
stuff.
Yep.
So this idea of just being an expert really isn't enough,
Mhm.
right? And so experts teach you what you should do
Mhm.
versus a thought leader is someone who sees the future and
Mm.
breaks it down to envision how you can get to that area.
Oh,
So
that's an
whether you
interesting
think,
way. Yeah, to frame it, but keep going. Yes.
yeah, well, and whether you think that's you or not, right? You're like, let's use Bob Varies. Bob Varies has been a
Yes.
thought leader in this business for decades. And so we're
Yeah.
not pretending to make everyone a Bob Varies after this, but what we
Right.
are saying is what gives you particular insight and how can you maybe be a visionary for your own client?
Mhm.
So it can be at a very large level, like a Michael Kitces or a Bob Berries, where you're helping tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. But it could also be how do you better serve those that you help every day? And that takes skill because it requires good communication skills. I use those two examples. Bob and Michael are incredible writers. They're incredible
Yep.
minds. And so, how can maybe you take one skill that's a weak skill for you and
Mhm.
strengthen it just
Right.
little by little? And by adding this component of a helpful community,
Mhm.
that helps strengthen that thought leadership. So, we're there to create thought leadership in a space that
Yep.
we want to see thrive. We want to see variation. We want to see not just variety in how financial advisors look and who they serve, but also in how we think and
Mhm.
how we do financial planning, right? And we think that that comes from a broad scope, from with a lot of different voices and a lot of different input, and
Yeah.
yet it'll look different in every single person's practice. And that's the coolest part is how you implement it. It's going to be different and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
good. We
Yeah.
want that.
Love it. I also really appreciate the learning model that you all have created, and that it's collaborative and you've got that push and pull versus kind of
Mhm.
the preaching too. So that's yeah, hats off to you. I'm sure that part of I'm sure this pull just from your numerous amounts of speaking and being in the classroom and years of experience there. Appreciate that too. Do you guys have like a forum? Are you just meeting in person or Zoom or how does that work?
No, great question. So we use a circle community. So it's an online platform. It's a community. We do a lot of virtual opportunities as well, and then
Right.
just have a lot of communication ability. We haven't had an in person yet. We
Mhm.
do occasionally. Several of us will meet up at a conference, but what we really like is this new age ability to connect people. Literally, we have people in this thought leadership community all over the world. And that's the other cool part about financial behavior
Yep.
is whether you're in England or South Africa or Australia,
Yes.
behavior is about people.
I was going to say
So
we're
we
all
don't need
human.
to debate
Yes.
tax law, right? Like tax
Right.
law is going to be dead in the
Gonna be
water because
different. Yeah.
yeah, totally different. But yet, when you really get into the psychology of money and how
Right.
people interact, we're human at the base level, whether you're in Asia or whether you're in South America. It's about
Yeah.
how people work, regardless of language or other or
Culture.
lack of money or more money, right? So we also don't differentiate on ultra high net worth versus merging middle market or low
Yep.
income or whatever. Everyone, and that's why I think the power of this group is there are
Yeah.
so many different speakers that speak to all,
It's
right?
so
Like, and we
transformative.
need more of that. That so
Hmm.
whoever your target market is going to look different, and that's good
Yep.
because these are important messages that need to get out to the world to change the world. That, and we believe through a speech or through the written word or through video, that's
Hmm.
how you change the world. Is little by little by little
Those bites.
helping out and
Yeah.
inspiring people around you.
I love that and the force of bringing it together. Oh my goodness, I feel like we could talk for such a long time. This is a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
Not to mention, I know you can speak on a number of topics. You have quite an impressive portfolio
Thank
for
you.
a variety of topics that I know you speak on and the group and what have you. So, where can folks learn more? Where should we go if we want to learn more about everything we've been chatting about today? So,
I love it. Yeah. Go to keynote.financial. So KEYNOTE dot financial. You will see. So if you're hosting an event, and let me pause right there on this part. This is primarily what we do with clients is help you get a client or get a speaker at your event. So that could be an FPA chapter. That could be a large conference. It could be a small conference. It can even be client events. And so
mm,
think about that. If you're wanting to add value to your clients, our speakers love doing these intimate events
mm,
where clients are touched because our speakers can speak not only to B2B, but also that B2C side. And
mhm,
so we'd love to work with you on any of those realms. So you can go there, you can see our list of speakers. We constantly are updating topics and ideas. And
mhm,
if you're like, hey, Mary, I don't have a clue, reach out to me. Let's have a call and I'll help you find the right fit
mhm.
for your speakers, because that's only the ones you're seeing on the website are only tip of the iceberg. We've got a lot more great minds behind the scene. If you're interested in learning more about this, but don't really have an event, go to our education page. And on side that education page, we offer monthly webinars. And I'm really excited to announce next year we'll be offering longer term workshops. So we right now we do webinars and book studies, which are
Yeah.
very popular. And we're going to start offering workshops, which will be of smaller, broken down chunks of showing you exactly how to do something and how to implement it rather than just a 1 hour webinar takeaway. So be on the lookout for that. And if you're like, Mary, I'm still wanting more, then join our community. We would
Yeah.
love to have you. And so that would be our community tab. And just jump in there. If you're like, I have no idea where to start, just get on my calendar and we'd love to talk to you and see where you're at in your journey. But we're really excited about taking what we know. It really started out where I began with. If I came to Washington, D.C. to change the world, because I feel like the information we know inside is so important. It's so valuable, and so many people need this. And so now it's fun to look back 20 years later and just say, wow, this is how I believe we are going to change the world. And it's
Yep.
not going to be me by myself. It's going to be a whole ocean of us together and
Mhm.
say, these are really important and we want to change your life, whether it's B2B, B2C, or whether you're helping one, hundreds, or thousands at a time. And so that's the exciting part behind it. So go to our website, check it out, or just jump on my calendar and I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Oh my goodness, Mary, thank you so much. This was such a fun conversation. So many good insights, right, for folks that are looking to get involved, number of ways for them to get involved or looking to bring a speaker in, and also just tips. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and also just your passion for the work and what you do for this community.
Thanks for having me on, Lauren. It's been
Of
great.
course.